Hello, everyone. So we talked about this before, and we talked about it many times. And we have the latest figures from the Diocese of Kilmore, which is basically carved in a bit of Logford too. And this is to do with the priests. Now, just when I start, that, it does have to change in terms of the priesthood, because it does take a long time. It takes 10 years or something to study for a priest. And of course, you can't marry, you can't have children, etc. I do think that should change. One thing for sure, and that should change. Because it is a quite lonely life being a priest, and I know you're supposed to be dedicated to God, but things have changed in the last 100 years, and I do think it would be, and of course the Bible does say that, people should recreate, etc. Reappropriate, may I use that word. And I do think it would be a lot better if a priest did have a wife and or children, etc. And I do think that should be allowed. I would encourage married men maybe to get into the priesthood too. And of course, looking at the 10 years, because it is an awful long time. Because in Cavan we've got two new priests, and we have the statistics here. And this is very, very worrying, because people will still be dying. People have to get married. People will be dying, and there's simply no priest to bury the people. There's no priest to give people the sacraments. There's no priest to marry the people, or to baptize too. And these are very important roles in Christianity. And the simple fact is that it's a tough life. It's not an easy life. You're dealing with people that are dead, people that are sick, dying, etc. It's not great. And for a lot of young people nowadays, it's not for them. Because they can't get married, they can't have children, they can't have a wife, etc. They can't basically do anything. And I think that should change. Now, I know a lot of people would be against women priests, but I do think if it gets any worse, then we have to kind of look at it. Because I know in the Protestant church they do allow women priests, but I know a lot of people would be against that. But at the end of the day, sadly, it probably will be necessary. It probably have to be necessary, because going by the statistics here, as I say, 70% of the priests in the Diocese of Kilmore here are over 75. A lot of them are into their 80s, going into their late 80s in some cases, and assume retiring because they stayed on because there was lack of priests. And take, for example, over 60% of the priests are over 65 too. So basically, there's only 25 priests in the Diocese of Kilmore that are near 40, basically just about near 40 years old, along with some foreign priests. I think the youngest priest is about 30, 31, 32. He's from Nigeria or somewhere. But what I'm trying to say is, when all these, a lot of these priests, as I say, are in the 70, 75, 70 or 65, when a lot of them pass away, and again, a few have passed away, there's nobody to take over the diocese. And that's just a simple thing. The multiple priests are doing multiple dioceses, which never used to be the case. Less than 20 years ago, it never was the case. That, like, I know one priest is doing 3 dioceses. They're doing 3 parishes. The parish priest at 3 places, which is insane. Technically they're not that big of towns, but it's still a lot of work. 3 dioceses to look after, if somebody's sick, to get people married. It must be a nightmare. But it's only going to get worse, and that's what the bishop has said. Bishop Hayes here now. Bishop Hayes isn't some man, but we're not saying much about him. I wouldn't be too fond of him, to be totally honest. But we do have to look at this in the whole interest of the state too, because it's pretty much quite wide across the board too. In Cavan, maybe it's a bit worse than maybe some places. Monaghan, is not great either, but it's a bit better than what Cavan is. And a lot of places, it's not great either. But we do have to look at it. We have to really, really look at it, because either we make it a bit easier for people to become priests, men or married men, as I say. I do think that should be lifted. That should be changed. It really should be. Because in Orthodox, I think they can get married. Even vicars and stuff in England can get married and stuff. And I do think it's necessary. And I do think it can, of course, the Bible says to weeper. Of course, you, as a priest, as a man of the God, the man of the cross, I suppose would say, you're supposed to be, deep in thought, deep in prayer, etc. But I do think things have to change in that regard, because we won't have any priests if we don't make it a bit easier on people, because it is a lonely life, it is a tough life. And I think even just them simple things might just encourage a few more people to go. But as I say about women too, that's, I suppose, a lot of controversy about that, because it probably will be necessary. Now, I'm not sure how many would do it, how many women would want to become priests, but I do think if the numbers get any worse, you have to kind of consider that. But I do think that, particularly with married priests, I do think that should be allowed. And with children too, I do think that should be allowed. And again, I do think it should be cut down, and I know people would say they should study the Bible inside and out. And I agree, of course, they should know what they're talking about, etc. But it is a long, long time. I even was talking to a priest one time. Unfortunately, he's passed away now, but what I'm trying to say is, he said that it took over 10 years and stuff for him to become a priest. back. Back. This is not. He was an older man, but what I'm trying to say, it took a long time. It took a really long time. And a lot of people won't. It's tough. It's not easy to have to remember all the Bible verses and have to remember everything. It's not easy. It's a lot of mental juggling too. And it's a tough life, as I say, burying people. You're baptizing people, then you have weddings and stuff. But it's tough. You've seen people dying and sick. It's not easy. It isn't easy. But you can understand why I suppose a lot of people wouldn't. It's not the money. The money is good. Of course, you get free poker house, etc. But I don't. I don't think it's a job that money can be beneficial, because it is a lot of work, and it's a lot of sacrifice. But I do think we should look at it really in terms of the marriages and stuff, because at the moment, if nothing is done, it's going to be basically, it might be only 5 priests left in Cavan in 20 years' time. That's just the way it's going, because at the moment in time, as I say, 35 priests under 40, just about under 40 in some cases. But a lot of them are near the 40 mark, and as they get older and stuff, because there's no new priests, we only have 1 or 2 maybe coming in every 10 years, 20 years. In the last 20 years, I don't think. In the last 15 years, I think there's only been 5 priests ordained here in Cavan. 5 or 6. It must be something like 5 or 6, but it's not a lot. There's more retiring than dying than there is being ordained, etc. So you have huge problems, as I say, about 1 parish priest is doing 3 parishes. You have huge problems, like really huge problems, coming down the track. But we have to look at it, I suppose, as a society, because it is a very necessary job. People do have to do it. But it's not so much the money. The money's there, but it's the other stuff, and we do have to look at that. But I know a lot of people would be against women priests, as I said at the beginning. But, as I say, I hope it does get better. But, a lot of people... But take, for example, myself, who am dyslexic, so it would be hopeless for me to become a priest. And let's be fair, the church wouldn't agree with a lot of stuff I have to say. Even though it's necessary, the church speak up a bit more too for people. And then maybe people would want to join them, because the church at the moment is silent about many, many things that's happening in society. They will not say anything. So they might get more people too if they speak up about different issues in society, because the church is nowhere to be found on many issues. But yeah, do let me know. As I say, we could talk about this till the cows come home, but it is something that does need to be looked at. It really, really does need to be looked at for society, because it is important that people get buried, and people get married, and people get baptized, and confirmations christened, etc. I'm sure everybody understands that it's important for society as a whole, not just for the church, the Catholic Church, but it is important for society, wider Irish society, for the parishes, the whole of Ireland too. It's really, really important that we do have priests, because they have a special role in Irish society, and Irish still have a special role in Irish society. But it's something that we do need to look at. We need to look at it very soon, because at the moment in time, if we do nothing, it's not going to help. Any action is needed. Anyway, let me know what you think. Subscribe for more. What do you think? Thank you.